I feel some sense of relief having left Canada. It is not only an illegal colonial state, as was pointed out on the first panel on whether or not it is possible to proceed after this acknowledgement, but the culture still carries the lingering stench of the mother country. The question, however, of where exactly the conference on the conference ends it remains open.
I am sure it continued into the dinner at Miss Trucas and through the dancing at the club where the old A&B sound record store used to be. I would recast the question rather in non-temporal terms, to wit, which parts of the conference on the conference ought we specify as constitutive of the work as a whole. I am thinking of those parts appearing incidental, like the table skirts, which, as Laura Marks pointed out, were concocted to mask or obscure embodiment, or the sound of the duct tape being peeled off the roll to hang the Students Against Goldcorp and Gentrification banner during Stephen Calissa's talk. And of course Chris Wellsby's missing video installation at sea.
I thought we agreed on the train up that we would at least try not to slide into such mere theological analysis. Which parts, dear friend, would you choose to oppose to one another so that the whole of the entity called the conference on the conference might be specified? Day 1 versus Day 2. Panel versus panel. Plenary versus keynote. Footnote versus keynote. Dance, theater, music versus talk. Talk read versus talk improvised. Text-based versus visual-based. Attendee versus non-attendee. Reluctant versus over-enthusiastic participant. Rooms used and unused. Second versus first versus third versus fourth floors. Conference as experienced versus conference as expected as conference. Real versus faux conference. Conference proper and post-conference archives. Entity versus objects events. Counting versus not counting. 20 minutes versus the rest of time. Good versus evil.
Okay. I get the point. I do not need yet another lesson in endurance. My concern is, rather, with attending to my experience of the piece in aesthetico-juridical terms, which then displaces any pseudo-problem regarding the specification of the whole. In this sense we may say the following. All that is air sublates into solid. Hence the evaluative criteria ought to be drawn from both the distantiating realms of aesthetic judgment and legal adjudication.
That may or may not be the case depending on whether or not one finds oneself in such a position requiring criteria of such kind. I was compelled more by the statement by Olivia Dunbar and Nikolai Gower, the only two participants to directly challenge the conference on the conference from within. Both of them tried to unmask the conference on the conference to reveal the circumstances of the production of the work and point out to the beneficiaries of such unremunerated labor, that is, Dylan Cree, Master of Fine Arts candidate at the School for Contemporary Arts at Simon Fraser University.
Isabel Paul Wells made a similar criticism during Cree's first-year project, Padaga, set in the West Fraser Timber Conference Room at Harbour Centre, regarding dependence upon audience complicity and what she called standard charisma. There is every reason to believe that at the actual defence of the final project, the conference on the conference, Cree will dodge Judy Ray Doole's questions pertaining to the specification of the work and his artistic deliberations that led to the work.
Last year he said, "I'm offering what's not there."
I can't imagine his external examiner, Scott Watson, will be as easily conned as the rest of the committee.
I wish someone had pulled the fire alarm during the 8th panel. That would have addressed the question, is it possible to respond?
Something should have been broken into pieces, like a table, because of the non-existent coffee and muffins, so that there would be some fungible units to sell to Bob Rennie.
It just occurred to me that you are sitting in the same spot as Gilles Deleuze, wearing the same suit, displaying the same unracialized epidermis, During his conversation with Michel Foucault about the binary theory practice as depicted in the animation by YouTube user Rajam6.
That is true but irrelevant, comrade. More significant was the tenderness displayed by Michael Turner when he was almost unable to speak of the deeply personal nature of his experience of time indifference.
Turner's reading of Dimitri Bouriotis's talk was inspired too. Christian's screened a conference, Faux in Perpetuity featuring Bouriotis as Dylan Cree and Reg Johansson as Silver Lottringer. That's Lee's bag who stole Ariana Beauvais' translation of Introduction to Kant's Anthropology.
Perhaps. But isn't contextualization even more overrated than verisimilitude? What about the Weasel War dance videos that Violetta Serra compiled as an example of one manner in which to approach the Phantom Project? What about Danielle Curry, who is, I am assured, the real Kaiser Sose behind the conference on the conference? What about Nietzsche, who, aside from Jerry's invocation of ressentiment, only appeared once, during Asda Yamani Hamadani's piece in order to insist upon the elusive transference or stammering translation between subject and object?
I told Dylan months ago he should be drawing from Xian Nai's account of Nietzsche's Zane to explain precisely the curiously desubjectified and highly subjectified at once text of the conference on the conference, but he was afraid of the association with the lineage of Alan Caprow and Klaus Oldenburg.
A happening would never have passed the University Ethics Board.
And the entire Woodwards complex might have been burned to the ground.
Who we really needed present was Lenore Herb, to coax out an unraveling of the conference on the conference through a contestation that could not be recuperated.
Indeed. Olive McKeon noted the power of the curator, in this case, the artist as curator. Have you read her essay collection Daggers Drawn?
Of course. Be wary of this bullshit about art saving lives, cities, and other claims made by the henchmen of capital.
Don't gaze me, bro.
Play the periphery, and seat the king.
I wish we were on a train to Wisconsin to press Adam R. Shapiro on his conception of a generalized theory of speaker absence and help prepare the informatics of the general strike.
Dylan says we need to stay in the Northwest to help him and his volunteers, Cut Wotherspoon, Nathaniel Wong, Stefan Smilevitz, Alexis van der Veen and Corbin Selekan, prepare the post-conference archives. I am not sure though if I want to be associated with the publication that may prompt lawsuits.
By then he will be out of the country and well into his MBA at Stanford.
No. Even the Harvard Business Review knows the MBI is worthless. It is for a reason they quote the boss of General Motors stating, I see us as being in the art business. Art, entertainment, and mobile sculpture, which coincidentally also happens to provide transportation.
Artists have a more intimate and intuitive understanding of the commodity form than businessmen. But I am still annoyed I was unable to ask Jaroslav my questions about Stirnerite parasitic anarchism from Herbert Reed to Wayne Burns and his reply to Agnes Heller regarding the interpretation of Columbo, who uses guile and cunning to trap his banal victims.
And his remarks on repetition automatism in the police video from the first eviction of the Woodward squat. We approached that part of Freytag's pyramid known as the denouement.
Did I miss the rising action? Did it occur as we passed Bellingham?
I am not going to dignify that with our response. Life is not worth living so long as hope exists. If you had not lost my brand new Christopher Nealon book, I would be quoting his quoting of Kevin Davis at this very moment.
I have apologized to you already for that. Did I not buy you a hardcover copy of The Insurance Man, Kafka in the Penal Colony?
You did. Another splendid line book.
Here is another clumsy parting gift from Nietzsche. One perishes if one always gets to the bottom of things.